You're listening to the tale of two podcasters from the 2007 RAB TGO Challenge, brought to you by theoutdoorstation.co.uk.
This podcast is just one of a special series produced from a wealth of recordings made in May 2007 by two backpackers, Andy Howell and me, Bob Cartwright, as we made our way via two different routes from the west to the east coast of Scotland as part of the 2007 RAB TGO Challenge.
Here at RAB, we're pleased to be involved in the TGO Challenge, which is the perfect testing ground for our clothing and sleeping bags. RAB has a Scottish heritage and over 25 years' experience of making gear that performs in the varied weather of the Highlands, as well as gear for the highest peaks in the Himalaya.
Co-sponsors TGO, the Great Outdoors magazine, have been behind this May event since its inception in 1980. The framework and principle is totally unique. It isn't a race or a competition of any kind. The objective is to foster good fellowship amongst walkers within the framework of a challenging 200-mile expedition. The start consists of a series of sign-out locations on the west coast, from Torridon in the north down to Ardrishaig in the south. Each challenger, solo, couple or group makes their way via a high route, a low route or a mixture of the two across Scotland to finish anywhere between Arbroath and Fraserburgh on the east coast. There's a set 2-week window to do this in, and each participant submits their route for inspection prior to departure for safety and advice reasons. The places, however, are limited to 300, and details about the event, entry forms, past stories and photographs can be found in the October issue of TGO magazine and on their website. Each participant makes the challenge as easy or as hard as they wish. The extremes can be a remote high route, crossing wild country and not seeing another soul for days on end. Or a route which takes in the many social events, perhaps not camping at all and just using established accommodation all the way. Most people do a mixture of the two in different forms. This year I started with my wife Rose in the beautiful village of Plockton, and Andy Howell with his partner Kate started from Strathcarron. We both carried recorders with us to capture our audio diaries and conversations which took place with other walkers as well as locals as we made our way to the east coast. Yes, this is the tale and adventures of two podcasters. Part 9. This is an extended interview with another well-known challenger, Alan Sloman, who was undertaking the TGO Challenge as part of his Land's End to John O'Groats trek, which he started on the 1st of March, and he was doing it in aid of Sue Ryder Care. Naturally, his 1,600-mile walk made our 200-mile jaunt a mere stroll in the park. So here we are in the Fife Arms in Braemar in the middle of May, where I'd seen Alan over the years on several occasions, but I'd never seen him looking so lean and fit.
I'm feeling absolutely fantastic. I've lost about 1.5 stone. I'm walking like a lunatic. I'm having days off all over the place so that challengers can catch up, but I'm feeling fantastic, Bob.
Well, you're looking as fit as a butcher's dog, it has to be said, and reading your blog and catching up with it every now and again, as most people have been doing, because everybody's been talking about it, that I've been bumping into on the challenge. We're just wondering how a man can eat and drink so well and yet still cover the ground that he covers.
I think without it, you find that you just get exhausted. So the more beer you consume, the fitter you become. I think that's the theory.
Yeah, it's definitely working it all off.
Yes, absolutely. There's no beer belly, look.
No, absolutely, there's nothing
Nothing
there.
there, absolutely flat.
Even the ticks are getting bored. So let's just do a brief review. We haven't got time really to go into great detail, and your blog does give all the detail, and we'll give the address at the end of this to make sure people do have a look at that. You started in fine style down at Land's End there. Just sort of as a general comment, really, what have you noticed about the different areas that you've been through? Because things have now changed, obviously, from down south. You're in the middle of Scotland now. There must be areas have certain characteristics.
Yep, Cornwall was incredibly full of rubbish. It was completely, every lane was full of litter. Devon was wonderful in comparison, and Somerset was an absolute joy because I had no idea how beautiful Somerset was going to be going through the levels. I was lucky. I was taken through a nice route by Russ Mannion, who lives down there, and it was just beautiful. Offers Dyke was a big surprise. I knew from the statistics beforehand that it was going to be really, really hilly, but the hills are short, but they're incredibly demanding and tough. And I spent most of the time in cloud, but Offansdyke is a wonderful walk, completely ruined by its finish point at Prestatyn, which is between two amusement arcades where sort of skinny youths with pimples are sort of playing slot machines and eating slush puppies and candy floss and all this sort of crap food, and that was a bit of a downer. But then you've only got to walk a few miles off to go into the little villages, climbing up the hill again, and you meet proper people again. The Pennine Way was glorious, but I was really, really lucky with the weather up the Pennine Way. I had fantastic weather, and I had lots of people to walk with. You'll have seen all that on my blog, and quite a few people were very generous and offered me accommodation, and they took me backwards and forwards to my start and finish points each day. People like Mike Osborne and Rick Smith and Lindsay, and I had a lovely, lovely time going up the Pennine Way. And I was met on the way to Bellingham onto the Backpackers weekend by a whole posse of challengers coming the other way, and they looked at their watch and said, "Well, we expected you to be here about an hour ago." And I said, "Well, I'm an hour late in 60 days, so it's not so bad." But the Cheviots were beautiful, and the last time I'd done them they were frozen. I was 19 years old and was going over frozen peat bogs, but we were really lucky again with fantastic weather. The Cheviots are just beautiful mountains with views just to die for. The canals going through Scotland were lovely, and I'd heard so many different conflicting reports about the canal walking being hard work, difficult people, nowhere to stay. And as soon as I got into Scotland, what impressed me more than anything was the welcome I got from the Scots, and the generosity as well of the people in Scotland. And they've been dipping in their pockets, sponsoring me, looking after me, giving me free rides on the Falkirk Wheel, free rides into Cruachan Visitor Centre. I've been having a lovely time. And when I got to Oban and met up with all the challengers, it's just been a party ever since. And I love the challenge, and I've geared the entire walk to be on the challenge. And what I love about it is the people you meet, people like Bob. And so it's just a wonderful family, and so I'm so super fit now. I'm having days off all over the place. I had half a day off at Kinlochranna, had a day off at Blair Athol, I've had a day and a half at Braemar, and I shall get to Montrose probably on the Wednesday and have another day off on Thursday. I really am noticing how after sort of 1,100 odd miles that you actually are quite fit, and it creeps up on you. You don't realise how fit you are until you walk with someone else, or you walk a route you've done before and realise that you're covering in a day what would normally take you 2 days. So I'm having a whale of a time, and everyone keeps telling me, wherever I get to, they say, "Oh, you wait till you get further north, it's even more beautiful." So I don't know what's going to happen when I get to John O'Groats, because you run out of land at that point.
Well, that sounds fascinating. Sort of comment there. You've had a reasonable amount of time, obviously, on your own as you go through this. Although there's been the people looking after you from time to time. What have you noticed, sort of, as the biggest change in yourself? Because you must have times when you're just reviewing your own personality and your own character.
That's very, very true. I was brought up in the southeast of England, and in the southeast of England you're taught to look after yourself, you treat people almost with suspicion, and it's very difficult to make new friends because you take some time before you actually get to know people. And I found, I suppose, by the time I got to halfway up through Wales, that life's too short, and you realise that unless you give something of yourself to when you meet someone new, you're never going to meet them properly. And I found that my whole attitude towards meeting new people has changed, and so now if I walk into a pub and dump the rucksack down with a heavy sigh, and if anyone offers you a slight entry, like, how you been or what you're doing, you talk, and before 5 minutes are up, you're firm friends, and you're buying each other drinks, and you're in really, really bad company and having a great time. And my whole attitude to people now has changed. If in Scotland, if I'd seen an estate Land Rover in years gone by, my first reaction would have been, oh God, someone to move me on, or someone to make sure I keep to the tracks, or someone to do this, or I was always thinking negative thoughts about the estates. And now you meet the stalkers and you meet the Land Rovers, and you realise these people are doing a job of work, and they're out there and they're outdoors, and they're doing their job because they love the outdoors, and they actually enjoy meeting people, and they're not there to keep you on the tracks, and they're not there to look after the interests of the landowners. They're there to look after the wildlife, they're there to look after the estate, they're there to look after you. And they're fantastic people you meet, but you've got to change your mindset. You've got to welcome them. And if you welcome them, my challenge this year has been totally different because of my attitude, not because of landowners' attitudes. My attitude has changed, and I think it's changing me as a person. I've touched on it in the blog a bit, but you can have a crappy day, and if you have a crappy day and you meet dreadful people, it's much more a reflection on you than it is on the people you meet, because they only really reflect your mental attitude. And so it really has changed me, and in a surprising amount that I often wondered, will I change on this walk? But the effect on me has been quite startling, and I've realised it myself, and so it's taken me quite a bit aback.
Looking at it on the other side, what about the days where you've been feeling good and you've actually had a bad welcome or bad response? You must have had a few of those.
I have one or two. There was one chap. I was on the way up to the Pentland Hills. I'd left Pennycook, and I was walking up this track, and it said, "You must gain permission to walk up this road." It didn't say where you had to gain permission from, or who from, or a telephone number. And so I walked up the road, and I got to his farm, and this dog started barking, and he shot out from his front door, and he berated me, saying, "Had you not seen the signs?" And so my whole attitude changed. In the past, I would have probably given him my 3 halfpence worth and told him what was what. So I smiled and said good morning, and what a nice day it was, and he was still sort of jumping up and down, saying that he was talking about his curtilage, and I thought, he obviously knows a little bit about Scottish rights of way and access and rights to roam. So I said, is it those signs, is this your land? And he said, well, yes it is. And I said, well, you put all those very unfriendly signs. Yes, he said. I said, well, you've got a shock. So I beckoned him over, and he was unwilling to come and join me, but I said, no, come on. I said, I want to show you something. And I showed him this thin blue line on my Anket maps. And I said, see this? I said, this is the new national trail. It's the new Land's End to John O'Groat's path, and it's coming right past your farm. At that point, he leapt back inside his farm saying, Mary, there's a new national trail coming past him. So I left him.
Excellent. What about the other part of it that crossed my mind from what you're doing, apart from the sort of psychological changes that you're obviously noticing in yourself, is also the physical. I mean, even just doing the challenge, within a few days you start to be much more in touch with your own body, on a sort of like, how am I feeling, does this hurt, does that hurt sort of thing. After this sort of period of time now, do you feel sort of in tune with what's going on inside your skin, as it were?
My feet are getting bigger. I have my Innovate, I think they're called Rocklight shoes, as my sort of soft hotel shoes, and I find when I put them on now, my toes are cramped, and I'm thinking, well, this is strange. They were really, really comfy before, and now I've realised my boots, I don't have to tie them up anywhere near so tightly, because I looked at my feet and they're like someone else's feet. They're much more muscled, which I suppose is hardly surprising, but also I find that it doesn't really matter if I'm going uphill or downhill. I can go uphill almost as quickly now as I can go downhill. And in fact, if it's a slight uphill gradient, it's actually more pleasurable to walk because it gives you something to push against, and it gives you something to work against, and it makes you feel better, it makes you feel more alive. If you're walking along a flat road, then you sort of, you sort of freewheel a little bit and you go into sort of autopilot. And I've actually found myself actually falling asleep as I'm walking, which is a bit of a strange thing. Just found myself staggering along in the middle of a road, realised I'd actually gone to sleep. But health-wise, my pulse rate was 2/3 what it was. Heart rate, my heart is pumping stronger, my lungs are bigger. My legs seem to be indestructible. I'm just in really, really good shape. Mentally, I'm bright. I think it's all the fresh air and the wind and the air. And the people in the company you meet, they keep you alive. And it's just the whole thing. You're just much more in tune with what's going on. I think you're right, Bob.
Yeah. I mean, presumably you met up with your wife, Linny, from time to time. And what sort of comments has she made? She's obviously made observations because she's seen you in separate chunks of time. You're pulling a face now, so I'm not too sure what's going to come out.
We met first in Bath, and at Bath I was knackered. We met at my daughter's flat in Bath, and I was exhausted, but I got to Bath and I really, really needed a day off because I was still quite unfit. And then I was just grateful to see Linny because I hadn't seen her for so long. So really, it was just nice to see a friend again. Next saw her again ages later when I was at Dufton on the Pennine Way, and then she noticed how hard my legs were. She said she was poking me all over my legs, saying, "Look at these legs, they're like steel." She said she couldn't get over my leg, the difference in my legs. I always remember Spike Milligan's Puckoon, when the author is describing Spike's legs. He says his legs hung from his underpants like two pieces of knotted string, and they were always my legs. And now they're a little bit like that. They're now more like sort of knotted rope. But she noticed how much tougher my legs were. I saw her again in Newton St Boswell's in the Border, which was the last time I saw Linny. And by that time, she said, I was sort of like a sort of elastic compound. She said, it was just incredible. I've lost weight from my chest, my belly is completely gone, but my legs and feet are like superhuman springs, and I'm fantastically fit.
So do you think this level of fitness you're going to be able to, or want to maintain when you get to the very end, which is very far away in many respects now? You must be actually thinking you're on the downhill slope, as it were.
Well, I'm in a pub, so it is a downhill slope. Absolutely right. But I don't know. I never think as far as that. I only ever think about the next day. I think because if you think about how long this walk is, I've done 1,150 miles, and so there's about 500 or 550 miles, something like that, to go. And if you think, 550 miles, you think that's a long time. That's 5.5 weeks of walking, 6 weeks of walking, whatever. And if you think of that, then you'll never get there. It's like first-time challengers. Always meet a first-time challenger, and on day 3, they look at it and think, God, there's 11 more days of this, and it's pouring down with rain. And what you say, no, there isn't. There's tomorrow. And tomorrow it might be sunshine and showers. The next day might be sunny. And you break it all down into day walks, and then it all becomes possible. But about halfway through, I was thinking, well, what am I going to do after this? And I remembered one of the things that inspired me to do this walk was John Hillaby's journey through Britain, and he also did a journey through Europe, which was Rotterdam to Nice. And so I was toying with Rotterdam to Nice, but I think if I mentioned that, Linny would kill me. So I think I've got this level of fitness. Then I'm not going to lose it, because you really. It's wonderful to have it. Anything is possible. You can go up mountains with rucksacks on, do Munros, do fantastic routes, and still be right as ninepence. So I never want to lose this fitness, but I think it's going to be impossible to try and stick at this level, but I'm never going to put that belly back on. And I am always going to go for a walk, and it's not going to be around Suffolk. I'm going to go off to the lakes like we used to do every other weekend almost, and I'm going to be spending a lot more time with me and Linny doing walks, and less time in the pub, less time in Suffolk, and actually more time on the hill.
Yeah, less time in front of a computer, definitely.
Yeah, exactly, yes.
Just a curious aside, somebody mentioned something, and I was thinking that's a good question to ask people, is when we undertake the challenge, there's always a tune that gets stuck in your head. Now, you've obviously done a long version since you started at Land's End. Is there any particular tunes that have been going round and round and just can't get rid of?
Yes. Terry Jacks, Seasons in the Sun. I had joy, I had fun, it just goes around my head. And it's been something that's been stuck with me, I think, since 1976, when it was in the Radio 1 Silver Jubilee Top 100, and it pipped Freeze All Right Now by one place, which at the time was my all-time favourite record. And still Terry Jacks is haunting me, and it still comes through. Years later, that must be getting on for 30 years later, that nasty little piece of work. It had joy and fun and laughter in the sun and seasons. It's horrible. And the other one is a much nicer one. It's Life of Brian, always look on the bright side of life. And when things are really, really shitty, that's a good one to remember.
Yeah. Never mind, Brian. Things could be worse. Just moving on to gear, because no doubt people we wanted to know how the gear's perform. Because obviously I spoke to you at the very beginning, and you'd taken ownership of your new tent, which you hadn't tried out. I think a new rucksack as well. We're well into it now. What's performed and what hasn't performed?
Wanda Warmlight, my Stevenson's Warmlight 2C, is sensational piece of kit. It is fantastic. You could actually sleep 3 people in it, but it's just all mine, and it weighs 1.2 kilos, and it is sensationally bomb-proof. I camped underneath Ben Louis on the way to Oban on a really, really wild night, and it was amazing. That tent, I recommend it to everybody. It is fantastic. It's lots of headroom, 5 feet wide at the front, 4 feet wide at the back, and it's 1.2 kilos, and it is bomb-proof. My Exped 7 short mattress, my feather mattress, has been wonderful until last night, when 2 of the tubes became 1 tube, and the ultrasonic seam welding must have split. And so I've just posted that back home to have an argument with Exped later on, and I've just bought myself a rather nasty little ProLite 3 short mattress to replace it. So I'm saving 300 grams, but I would much rather be carrying my mattress, which has failed. A sleeping bag which I'd custom built by PhD has been sensational. I had it with a dry light cover, a heavier lining on the inside. It's been a magnificent bag, and PhD, my down jacket, which is new from PhD, has been sensational. My little stove, my Varga titanium from Bob, perfect every time, not missed a beat, perfect. And I love the way it fits inside my little cup. Everything, my whole cook set is the size of a large grapefruit, and that has been fantastic. My rucksack, sensationally good, an Osprey Atmos 50. I think it's been superseded by a new model now, but it is amazingly comfortable and capacious. With a 50-litre sack, I'll get everything inside it, and it is excellent. I can carry all up weight, 5 days' food with a litre of water, with all my gas and everything. All the weight, even with the anorak stowed in, is about 32 pounds. So I don't know what that equates to for what you call the dry weight, or whatever you call it, but it's probably no more than about 22 pounds, something like that, which for a lot of people is quite heavy, but for me, because I've got a pillow, I've got a mattress, I've got a nice big tent, is really, really good. And so I'm been delighted with my kit. There's nothing I would change.
So, I mean, there's been nothing you sent home at any stage then, or wanted to update for a better thing?
I sent my Gorilla Pod home. I'd only used it once in the entire trip, so I sent it home. In the end, I'm doing the Mick Hopkins camera arm's length, going along taking pictures of myself with the mountains in the distance, and that's just as good as a Gorilla Pod. And so I sent that home, and I don't know what I'll use. I'll probably flog it on eBay.
The blogging system that you've been using looks very efficient from a viewing point of view. Has that given you any hiccups at all?
It's been amazing, absolutely good. The PDA, it's a Palm TX1 or TXI, I'm not quite sure. It's been bomb-proof, nothing's gone wrong with it. It lasts 4 or 5 days before it charges, so that's plenty. The phone's been good. The keyboard I've had a few problems with, but apparently that's quite normal. You just tweak it a bit and punch it and pull it, and the keyboard works again. But as a system, it really is first class. What I would try and do is I'd try and choose kit with one charger. I've got a charger for my camera, a charger for my phone, a charger for the PDA, and that weighs more than the computer and the keyboard. And so I would do a bit more research and try and find stuff that uses the same charger. That was the only thing I'd change.
And now looking with the most of England, but well, all of England behind you, and halfway across the challenge, for people who are considering doing the challenge, that perhaps have put it to one side, I think you've probably got now. You've done the challenge yourself. What, 10 times or so? 12 times. Plus the trip behind you. Is there any one thing that you possibly advised people in the past to consider that you'd now change your mind on?
Start early and finish early. If you're tired, stop. Don't walk when you're tired. I've seen so many challengers stumbling around, falling over, making silly mistakes, navigation errors. It's only ever because they're tired. They've started too late in the morning. The weather's always better in the morning than it is in the afternoon, and certainly on the west coast of Scotland. So always start early, and if you get tired, stop, have a brew, have something to eat. Walk a little bit later after you've had something to eat, but don't walk when you're tired. People have had accidents, people have broken arms, people have come ill. A good friend from the internet who I've met, Darren's not been very well. He's been looked after by a friend of mine, Phil. But I don't think there was anything that could have stopped that. And I think if you get ill, then you're very, very lucky to have someone like Phil to walk with you. But advice always is never ever walk when you're tired.
When you say start early, what sort of time do you mean?
Well, I like, when I'm camping, I'm usually away if I can by 7 o'clock, and it only takes me from waking up at 6, I can have a light breakfast and be away by 7. It doesn't matter if you pitch a soaking wet tent, because even if you're pitching the tent when it's soaking wet, even in the rain, within 2 minutes you can have the inside of that tent perfectly dry enough to be habitable and in and out of the rain. So never worry about waiting to pack a wet tent. Wet tents don't matter. Pack a tent, just get away.
Talking about food very quickly then, you had certain preparations and dehydrated food we were talking about, but you said that it was too far ahead for you to deal with, and you've sort of been eating off the land and, as it were, going to the pubs and so on. Any more comments on the food front?
The stuff I really swear by now is a company called Real Expedition Foods, and they make something called Termat. It's Norwegian. And their foods, I had about 5 of each type, and I haven't had a dud. They're all fantastically tasty, and you have to have a big appetite, but I have been clearing every single one. They are excellent, and I recommend the beef stew. It's fantastic, and the sweet and sour chilli, sweet and sour chicken. The chilli is good, and I never eat chilli. I've had some curries, and I never eat curry, and they've been marvellous. But I think when you're on a big walk, you'll eat anything. But these foods are tasty, and they're really good, and they're less than a £5.
Excellent. You're obviously another week to go almost. Obviously yourself only a couple of days. A week to go before we get to the end to Montrose on the challenge. You'll be racing ahead of us. I'm no doubt enjoying the social side as it all comes to an end next sort of Thursday, Friday. After that, how are you feeling? Are you sort of looking forward to the solitude again, or is it something you're sort of feeling you're really starting to wind down?
It's a different walk. I geared this whole walk around the challenge to make sure I was at Oban in time to start the challenge, because I do it every year and I wouldn't miss it for the world. But the days I think that are the most rewarding are when you are out on your own in the middle of nowhere, and maybe you've had a bit of a struggle, maybe you've had a difficult night and it's been blowy and cold and wet, but the next day, I don't know, you seem to grow through the process, and the solitude, you churn things over in your mind, and you sort things out, and I don't know, I hope I'm coming out of this a nicer person than when I started. Maybe I was always a bit insular, maybe a bit arrogant. I don't know, maybe not getting too deep, but I hope that the days when you are on your own, it does give you time to think about your life and put things in perspective a bit, and maybe value your relationships a little bit more. rather than taking them for granted. So I'm looking forward to the days when you are alone. I've still got a few days with some friends coming up. I've got one chap, Richard White, who I've walked with over many years, and he's coming up to join me at Cape Wrath. So I'm going to look forward to those days, but the days when you're on your own are valuable, and so I am looking forward to them.
And just finally then, if there was any one thing when you finish and you get back home and say, right, this is definitely going to change, that you've put up with or accepted for the last X number of years, with all this introspective time that you've had, when you get back, obviously relationship aside, 'cause obviously you want to make the most of that, is there any one thing you're just going to get back and change? Knock a wall down, move the house 6 foot to the left, anything along those lines?
God, I mean, that's deep. There's so many things I'm thinking of changing, but I'd have to talk to Linny first, because some of them are pretty big and structural, and do I really need this bloody great house in this gorgeous spanking village, and do I really need to work my nuts off, and do I need all sorts of things? But you have, at the end of the day, I'm still young and I've got responsibilities to my children, my mum, my wife, and we have standards of living. But when you meet people who've retired early, and they are happy as Larry, and when you meet people who've had to retire through health reasons and they're now happy, and you think, well, maybe work isn't everything. And I've always been driven by work and driven by the need for success. And now now is the time to, after this walk, to sit down and reflect and say what is more important. And I think there are some big changes coming, but I'm not going to make them on my own. These are decisions I'm going to have to make with Linny.
So it sounds like you're looking at moving the fulcrum, the place of balance.
Absolutely, Bob. You're absolutely right. At the moment, I think I got it out of balance, and everything is all about, I don't know, not status, but it's about wealth creation, about looking after too many people rather than looking after me and Linny.
Okay, well, very finally then, many thanks indeed for all your time in the midst of all this socialising and celebration, which is obviously a great success, and congratulations for the trip so far, and obviously you'll get there no problem at all. Just very quickly then, to people that have listened to this and want to read in great detail, the blog address, if you could just give me that, and also is there going to be a little book or a booklet coming out from this? It sounds fascinating. I'm sure it'll be a great read of places to eat all through England.
No, there's no book coming. The blog's enough. I like the blog because it's real time. There are things I've written on the blog that I might regret. With hindsight, maybe I shouldn't have written. But at the time they were heartfelt, and so I wrote them down, and I'm not going to change it. I don't edit it. It's all, once it's there, it's down on paper and that's it. But no, there's not going to be a book. I haven't got time. I've got to go and earn some money again because I'm bleeding to death doing this walk. So I've got to go earn a bit of money, keep the bank manager and the bailiffs away from me. So no book, I'm afraid, Bob.
And the blog address is?
www.alansloman, all one word, that's SLOMAN.blogspot.com.
Concludes this part of The Tale of Two Podcasters from the 2007 RAB TGO Challenge, brought to you by theoutdoorsStation.co.uk.